Hello everyone. They say there is a sutra that changes its lyrics depending on who reads it, and when young Sutta touched it, time stopped. If you like stories like this, subscribe to the channel and leave a comment below. Where are you watching from, and what time is it now? Let's get started. The sea was restless that spring of the 6th century. The gray sky hung low like a shroud over the restless waves of the East China Sea. A vast, untamed expanse that both separated and connected lands and peoples. Across these waters, a fragile wooden vessel strained against the wind, its sails billowing like the wings of a great bird on a sacred mission. On board the ship from the Korean kingdom of Baekje were envoys bearing gifts, precious silks embroidered, with dragons, rare metals wrought by master artisans, and, most importantly, scrolls and statues of a foreign faith that had blossomed in the great lands of India and China. Buddhism. To the people of Baekje, this faith was a radiant light, a sacred truth that promised a path beyond suffering, a middle way between extremes. The journey had not been easy. Storms had battered the small ship, threatening to swallow it into the cold depths. The crew and envoys whispered prayers, not only to their ancestors and the gods of the sea, but to the Buddha himself, hoping that the compassion that had guided the enlightened one would protect them on this perilous voyage. As the shores of the Japanese archipelago finally emerged through the mist, the rugged cliffs and dense forests of Yamato, a silent awe settled over the travelers. They knew this land was ancient, steeped in its own traditions and gods, where the kami dwelled in sacred groves and mountains, invisible but ever present. Could these foreign teachings of karma, samsara, and nirvana find a home here? Or would the arrival of the Dharma light ignite conflict and fear? The envoys were led to the court of Emperor Kinmi, a man of considerable wisdom but wary of new ideas that threaten to unsettle the delicate balance between heaven, earth, and humanity. In the grand hall, where banners fluttered and courtiers whispered, the gifts were presented, the scrolls inscribed with sutras. A gilded statue of the Buddha seated serenely in lotus posture, an incense that filled the air with a fragrance unlike any the Japanese had known. As the emperor gazed upon the golden figure, he felt a stirring deep within his soul, a glimmer of something beyond this world, beyond the power of the kami. The Buddhist envoys spoke softly of compassion, of liberation from suffering, and of the interconnectedness of all beings. Yet, the language was strange, the ideas foreign outside the palace walls. The common people whispered with curiosity and apprehension. The sea had brought them something new, a light that promised hope, but also threatened the old ways. Of the Shinto shrines watched carefully, their hearts torn between respect for the old gods and fear that these foreign teachings might awaken forces beyond their control. In the days and weeks that followed, the Dharma light flickered uncertainly in this new land. Monks from Baekje began to teach, and Japanese scholars struggled to translate the complex scriptures. Some embraced the teachings with open hearts, while others resisted. Clash of worlds had begun, but so too had a delicate dance, a weaving of faiths, a mingling of traditions that would shape the spiritual destiny of Japan for centuries to come. Journey and mysticism, the envoy's voyage, was more than a simple crossing of seas. It was a passage through realms, both physical and spiritual. At night, sailors spoke of strange lights dancing on the waves, ethereal flames that whispered secrets of the Dharma. One monk, a venerable man named Gin, claimed to have dreamed of a radiant bodhisattva guiding their ship, a luminous figure whose presence calmed the storm and filled the travelers with unwavering resolve. As the ship neared the Japanese shores, a thick fog enveloped them, muting sound and blurring vision. It was as if the boundary between worlds had thinned. The envoys whispered sutras, their voices a balm against the encroaching uncertainty. When the fog lifted, the islands of Japan stood before them like a sacred realm awaiting transformation. Cultural clash Japan. In this era was not a blank slate, but a land proud of its native traditions. The kami were woven into every aspect of life. The harvest, the birth of a child, the rise and fall of seasons. To many, the idea of worshiping a foreign, enlightened being was incomprehensible. The envoy's gifts were met with cautious curiosity, but also suspicion. Courtiers debated fiercely. Some saw Buddhism as a source of learning and cultural enrichment that could strengthen the state. Others warned of upsetting the divine balance and angering the kami. Outside the court, the priests of Shinto shrines gathered in secret, performing rituals to protect their lands from these foreign influences. This tension between reverence and resistance marked the earliest days of Buddhism's arrival, a time when faith was not just a matter of belief, but a question of identity and power. Epilogue. The first light, though the Dharma light, had arrived like a flicker in a darkened room. Its flame was fragile, but enduring. Over time, that light would grow, illuminating the hearts of many, blending with the ancient ways, and giving rise to a spiritual tapestry uniquely Japanese. The arrival of Buddhism was not merely a religious event, but the birth of a new era, a journey of mysticism, courage, and transformation that would echo through centuries. In the heart of the Yamato plain, under the silvery glow of a waxing moon, Emperor Kinmei lay restless upon his silk-strewn bed. The palace, usually alive with the gentle rustle of courtiers and the faint scent of incense, was unusually silent, as if the very air awaited some profound revelation. Kinmei, ruler of the Japanese archipelago, had long carried the burdens of his realm on his shoulders. His ancestors, the divine descendants of the sun goddess Amaterasu, had guided their people through centuries of growth and struggle. Yet, in recent days, a deep unease gnawed at him, a whisper of change stirring beneath the surface of his kingdom. That night, as the emperor drifted into sleep, the veil between worlds thinned. The vision begins in the dreamscape. Kinmei found himself standing on a vast mountaintop shrouded in mist. Before him, seated on a radiant lotus throne, was a figure bathed in golden light. The figure's eyes were closed in serene meditation. His hands rested gently in his lap, forming a delicate mudra, the gesture of teaching. The aura around him shimmered like molten gold, casting a luminous glow that banished all shadows. Kinmei knew in that moment that this was no ordinary being. Though he had never seen such a figure in the flesh, the image resonated deep within him. A presence that radiated compassion, wisdom, and infinite peace. Suddenly, the golden figure opened his eyes and spoke, not in words, but in a melody that touched the emperor's heart. The message was clear. The path to liberation is not found in conquest or power, but in understanding and compassion. Kinmei awoke with a start, his heart pounding and his mind racing. The vision lingered, vivid as the dawn, the symbolism of the golden man, image of the golden man in the lotus position, puzzled Kinmei and his closest advisors. The lotus, a flower growing from the mud, yet blossoming pure and untouched, symbolized purity and enlightenment, concepts unfamiliar to many in the court steeped in Shinto beliefs. Was this figure a god, a spirit, or a messenger from beyond the seas? Some courtiers whispered that it might be a new kami, one born from the union of foreign and native spirits. Others feared it was an omen, a warning from the heavens. The emperor summoned his most learned priests and scholars to interpret the dream. They consulted ancient texts divined through cracked shells and burning bones, and debated late into the night. One learned scholar, versed in the scrolls brought from Baekje, suggested that the golden man could be Shakyamuni, Buddha, the enlightened, sage from the distant lands of India and China, whose teachings had begun to reach their shores. prophecy and divine mandatha. Idea that the emperor himself had been chosen to receive such a vision stirred both hope and fear. To accept the dream as a prophecy was to acknowledge a new spiritual order, one that could reshape the very foundation of Yamato society. To reject it risked denying a divine message and losing favor with the unseen forces that governed fate. Kinmi pondered the weight of this revelation. Could this golden man truly be the Buddha, the awakened one? What would it mean for his people, their beliefs, their gods, their way of life? He recalled the envoys from Bakye who had arrived bearing sacred images and sutras. Their faith had touched something deep within him. Yet the path ahead was uncertain. Night visions and the emperor's resolve. Night, Kinmi's dreams returned. The golden man's presence grew stronger, and the visions expanded beyond. The lotus throne to show scenes of distant lands, serene temples, and people seeking peace amidst turmoil. In one vision, Kinmi saw himself bowing before the golden figure, offering his sword and crown in humble devotion. The emperor awoke with tears streaming down his face, a sign he believed that his destiny was intertwined with the Dharma. Yet the court was divided. Some ministers warned that embracing this foreign faith might alienate powerful clans and provoke the wrath of the kami. Others urged caution, reminding the emperor of the delicate balance that held the realm together. Despite the turmoil, Kinmi's conviction deepened. He resolved to explore the teachings further, inviting monks from Bakye and China to reside at court and share their wisdom. The intersection of worlds. The emperor's dreams marked a pivotal moment, the intersection of ancient tradition and new revelation. The golden man in the lotus position was more than a vision, a harbinger of a spiritual dawn, as Kinmi took the first steps toward embracing Buddhism. The seeds of change were sown, not without resistance, but with a promise of a new path for Japan. Reflection, the power of dreams. Many cultures, dreams are portals to the divine, messages that bridge the earthly and the spiritual. For Emperor Kinmi, the dream of the golden man was a call to awaken, a sacred encounter that transcended language and time. It was a prophecy, not only of faith, but of harmony, urging the emperor and his people to seek unity beyond conflict, compassion beyond power. The golden figure's eyes, calm and knowing, remained etched in Kinmi's memory, a guiding light through the unknown future. In the early days when the Dharma light had just begun to flicker in the land of the rising sun, a quiet but fierce storm brewed within the heart of Japan's spiritual realm. The ancient kami, guardians of mountains, rivers, and forests, stirred. restlessly. Their timeless watch over the land was being challenged. A new faith, foreign and profound, now sought a place in the sacred landscape. The divine tension awakens the priests of the Shinto shrines. Robed in white and carrying sacred sakaki branches, gathered in solemn council beneath towering cedar trees. They had heard rumors of the golden Buddha statues brought by envoys from Baekje, and whispered tales of strange chants echoing through the courtyards of the imperial palace. Miyoko, a revered high priestess of the Izuma shrine, lifted her eyes to the heavens. "The kami have spoken," she declared, her voice trembling with urgency. "They warn us the arrival of the Dharma threatens to unbalance the harmony between heaven, earth, and man. The old ways must not be forsaken." Her words ignited fierce debate among the priests. Some believed the new teachings could coexist with Shinto, enriching the spiritual tapestry. Others feared the kami's anger would bring calamity, storms, failed harvests, and disease. A clash of faiths. The emperor, caught between reverence for his ancestors and curiosity about the foreign faith, called for a rare gathering, a conference between Shinto priests and Buddhist monks newly arrived from Baekje and China in the grand hall of the palace, adorned with hanging lanterns and banners. Tension crackled like static electricity. The high priest, Take stern and traditional, stepped forward. "The kami have nurtured this land for centuries. They demand respect. Your teachings of karma and rebirth are foreign, confusing the people. How can you ask us to abandon the gods who have protected us since time immemorial?" In response, the wise monk Ging, whose silver beard and calm demeanor commanded attention, spoke softly but firmly. "Great priest Taki, the Buddha teaches not the destruction of gods, but compassion for all beings. The Dharma is a path to understanding the true nature of suffering and peace. It is not meant to supplant, but to complement." The debate raged through the day and into the night, voices rising and falling like waves crashing on rocky shores. The emperor watched, torn between two worlds. The spiritual dilemmas. Days passed. The conflict seeped into the everyday lives of the people. Farmers hesitated to abandon prayers to the kami before planting rice. Villagers feared the new Buddhist rituals might anger the local spirits dwelling in the ancient groves. In one village near Mount Fuji, a Shinto priest named Haru confronted a traveling Buddhist monk who had set up a modest meditation hall. "Why do you offer teachings from distant lands? Our ancestors' spirits watch over us here. Your faith is a stranger." The monk smiled gently. "I come not to replace your gods, but to share the light that has helped many find peace. The Buddha's compassion embraces all, even the kami. Perhaps the two paths can walk side by side, like the twin rivers that join without losing their course. Haru was silent, the words stirring something deep within. Yet, the fear of offending the unseen powers remained a shadow. Divine politics in the imperial court. The conflict had political implications. Powerful clans aligned themselves with either Shinto or Buddhism, each seeing influence and power at stake. The ancient tradition was a source of identity and legitimacy. The new faith promised connections with continental powers and the promise of social reform. Whispers of plots and alliances filled the corridors. Some nobles feared that adopting Buddhism might weaken the emperor's divine status as the direct descendant of Amaterasu. Others saw the opportunity for strengthening the state through Buddhist teachings of harmony and justice. The Kami's message one night, as the tension reached a crescendo. A strange event shook the realm. The high priestess Miyoko dreamt of a vision. The Kami, manifested as brilliant, shimmering beings of light, appeared before her in a sacred grove. They spoke not with words, but with powerful feelings, a plea for balance, respect, and understanding. When Miko awoke, she declared to the court, "The Kami do not demand rejection of the Dharma, but a harmony of ways. The old and the new must dance together, each honoring the other's place. Only then will the land flourish." This message, radical in its time, planted the seed for reconciliation, the dance of faith from that day forward. Efforts began to blend the teachings. Buddhist monks incorporated Kami rituals into their ceremonies. Shinto priests accepted the presence of Buddha statues alongside their shrines. A new spiritual landscape emerged, where the Kami and the Dharma light coexisted, sometimes uneasily, sometimes harmoniously, in a delicate balance that would define Japan's religious identity for centuries. Reflection, tradition, and renewal. The conflict between Shinto and Buddhism was more than a religious dispute. It was a profound spiritual dilemma, a negotiation between the known and the unknown, the past and the future. It tested the hearts of priests and emperors, villagers and scholars. It demanded courage to embrace change without forsaking heritage, and through the clash and reconciliation, a deeper understanding blossomed that sacred truth could wear many forms, and that the divine could be many voices singing the same song of life. In a time when the whispers of the Dharma had just begun to weave through the fabric of the Japanese islands, a young prince named Haru wandered the sprawling palace grounds with a restless heart. Orphaned at a tender age, he had grown under the watchful eyes of guardians and tutors, yet a deeper longing stirred within him, a yearning for meaning beyond the golden halls and silken tapestries. The Prince's Solitude, Haru's days were filled with lessons in swordsmanship, poetry, and court etiquette, but the boy found little joy in these pursuits. His nights, however, belonged to dreams, vivid and mysterious, in which a golden light called to him through misty forests and tranquil rivers. One evening, while exploring a forgotten chamber in the palace's ancient library, Haru's fingers brushed against a hidden scroll case. Intrigued, he carefully pulled it out and unrolled the delicate parchment inside. The scroll shimmered faintly. It was a sutra, a sacred Buddhist scripture speaking of the middle way, the path that avoids extremes and leads to liberation. The call to initiation. As Haru read, the words seemed to breathe life, whispering truths about suffering, desire, and the mind's illusions. The teachings spoke of a journey inward, a quest not for power or glory, but for awakening. Compelled by a force he could not name, Haru sought out the court's newly arrived Buddhist monks. Among them was Master Jian, a serene figure who welcomed the boy with a gentle smile. "Prince Haru," the master said, "the sutra you hold is a beacon for those who seek the truth. It will guide you through the trials ahead if you are willing to walk the path." The prince nodded, feeling a spark of hope and resolve. The journey within under Master Jian's guidance. Haru began his initiation. He learned to meditate, to observe his thoughts without judgment, and to understand the nature of impermanence. Yet, the path was not easy. Doubts crept in like shadows, fears of losing status, of disappointing his people, of facing the unknown alone. One night, Haru dreamed again of the golden light. This time, the golden figure spoke clearly. "The path is yours to choose. True strength lies in compassion, not conquest." The prince awoke, tears streaming down his face, feeling the weight of responsibility transform into a sacred mission. Trials and temptations. Haru's journey was marked by challenges, temptations of pride, anger, and attachment. Courtiers mocked his new faith, calling it a foreign superstition. His closest friend warned him of losing his place in the royal line. Yet, with each trial, Haru's understanding deepened. He embraced humility, patience, and kindness. The sutra's teachings became his compass, illuminating the darkness within. The gift of the Golden Sutrang, a misty morning. In the palace gardens, blooming with cherry blossoms, Haru received a gift from Master Jian, a golden-bound copy of the sutra, adorned with lotus motifs and inscribed with sacred seals. This sutra, the master said, is not merely a text, but a living guide. Let it remind you that the true kingdom lies within the heart. With the sutra in hand, the young prince felt a calm resolve. Though his path was uncertain, he knew he carried a light that could illuminate not only his own journey, but that of his people. Reflection. The hero's, called Prince Haru's story, is one of initiation, a call to rise beyond inherited power and embrace a deeper truth. The Golden Sutra was not just a scroll, but a catalyst for transformation, guiding a young soul through the labyrinth of doubt toward awakening. It reminds us that true leadership is born not of crowns and swords, but of wisdom and compassion, and that the path to enlightenment begins with a single step into the unknown. In the mist-wreathed folds of the ancient Japanese mountains, where pine trees whispered age-old secrets and rivers sang songs of eternity, a new chapter in the spiritual history of the archipelago began to unfold. It was a time when the Dharma, sacred teachings of the Buddha, traveled not by grand armies or imperial edicts, but on the feet of wandering monks, whose footsteps echoed through valleys and villages, weaving a tapestry of wisdom, compassion, and transformation. The arrival from distant lands, from the distant kingdoms of Baekje and the sprawling lands of China, where Buddhism had already taken root and blossomed, monks crossed the seas and mountain passes to bring their sacred sutras, statues, and teachings to the people of Japan. Among these monks was the venerable master Siwan, a figure as enigmatic as the mist-shrouded peaks themselves. Clad in simple robes, his long silver hair flowing like the mountain streams, Yuan carried not only scrolls and relics, but a presence that radiated ancient knowledge and profound calm. The first steps on Yamato, Soil Sihun's arrival was heralded by a sudden rain, a cleansing shower that baptized the land as if nature itself recognized the arrival of a sacred emissary. As he descended from the boat at a small harbor, local villagers gathered in curiosity and awe. The monk's serene demeanor contrasted with the bustling energy of the coastal town. Suwan was soon joined by fellow monks from Baekjeong and Eager, disciples like Jinsu and Kato, who shared his passion for teaching and a humble desire to learn from the land and its people, the sacred cargo, sutras and statues, and shoulders. The monks carried precious bundles, wrapped carefully in silken cloth, were sutras, sentient scriptures penned in delicate calligraphy, their texts alive with the voice of the Buddha himself. Alongside the texts were statues of Shakyamuni Buddha carved from sandalwood and gilded in gold leaf, their serene faces etched with compassion and infinite peace. The monks set about unpacking their sacred cargo in a modest temple provided by the court, a space that soon filled with the scent of incense, the soft chanting of sutras, and the quiet awe of those who gathered. The exchange of knowledge and culture, the monks Though bearers of foreign wisdom, were not imperial conquerors, but humble servants of the Dharma. They sought to build bridges, learning from Shinto priests, sharing stories of the Buddhist life, and discussing the profound mysteries of existence. Master Jiwan often met with local sages in quiet groves, where conversation flowed beneath blossoming cherry trees. They spoke of impermanence, the nature of suffering, and the possibility of enlightenment through their words and presence. The monks became living vessels of ancient knowledge, slowly transforming hearts and minds. Stories from the Rohajinsu. A young monk with bright eyes and boundless curiosity traveled through villages, sharing stories that wove together Buddhist parables with Japanese folklore. He told of Kisa Gatami, the woman who learned the universality of loss, of the tortoise, and the hare, a story of patience and persistence, and of Avalokitesvara, the bodhisattva of compassion, whose 1,000 arms reached out to save all beings. Children and elders alike gathered around him, their faces illuminated by the flickering firelight, hearts opening to the gentle power of Kaustor. Of these tales, the mountain, as a teacher, the monks did not limit their teachings to temples or palaces. The mountains themselves became a living classroom. They meditated beneath ancient cedars, listening to the wind's song and the whisper of the leaves. It was here that Master Jiwan spoke of the empty nature of all things, the profound truth that form and emptiness are one, a mystery, as deep and vast as the mountain itself. Challenges and adaptations, the monk's mission was not without hardship. Language barriers, skepticism, and resistance from those who feared foreign influence tested their resolve. Yet, with patience and humility, the wandering monks adapted. They learned the local dialects, adopted aspects of Shinto ritual to create harmonious ceremonies, and respected the ancient customs while gently introducing the Dharma's teachings, the seeds of a new spiritual landscape. By the time the first snow blanketed the mountains, the voices of the wandering monks had begun to resonate deeply. Small temples and meditation halls appeared where none had been before. Local leaders sought their counsel in times of strife and uncertainty. The monks' presence was a quiet revolution, a blending of cultures and beliefs that enriched the spiritual fabric of Japan reflection. The path of the wanderer. The wandering monks were more than teachers. They were bridges between worlds, carriers of wisdom who walked lightly upon the earth, yet left deep footprints in the hearts of those they met. Their journey reminds us that true knowledge travels not by force, but through humility, openness, and the simple act of sharing in the voices of the mountains. The sutras found new life, and in the hearts of the people, the Dharma's light began to shine. The princess and the garden of 108 lotuses, the quiet heart of the imperial palace, where silk curtains whispered secrets and fragrant incense curled through gilded halls, lived Princess Akoa, young woman whose spirit, like the lotus blossoming from the mud, sought light amid shadows. Born into privilege, but yearning for something deeper, Isio's story would intertwine with dreams, divine symbols, and a secret garden where the Dharma's gentle embrace would bloom. The princesses. Solitude and dreams, though surrounded by attendants, and courtly splendor, Aiko often found herself alone, wandering through hidden corridors and quiet courtyards. Her nights were filled with vivid dreams of a radiant figure seated serenely upon a lotus flower, golden light pouring like dawn over dark waters. Each dream left her heart both aching and hopeful, as if the mysterious vision carried a message meant only for her. One night, as cherry blossoms fell like soft snow outside her window, the vision spoke in a voice as delicate as petals. Seek the garden where the lotuses bloom in 108. There, your path will awaken. The secret garden, conceived driven by the dream's haunting call. Aiko confided in her most trusted maid, Yumi, a gentle soul with wisdom beyond her years. I must find this garden, the princess whispered, a place of peace where I might understand the light that calls to me. Together, they scoured the palace grounds and surrounding forests until, hidden behind a veil of bamboo and wisteria, they discovered a neglected patch of earth once, a garden now overgrown and forgotten. With quiet determination, Aiko set to work. Day by day, she cleared the weeds, planted lotus seeds brought from a distant Buddhist temple, and tended the water-filled ponds with loving care. The symbolism of 108 lotuses, the number 108 held sacred meaning in the Buddhist teachings, a symbol of the 108 defilements humans must overcome to reach enlightenment. The blooming lotuses would serve as a living mantra, reminding Aiko that beauty and purity could arise even from murky depths as the lotuses began to bloom. Their delicate petals unfolding in the sunlight, the garden became a sanctuary, a place where the princess could meditate, reflect, and connect with the deeper currents of existence. A subtle romance blossoms in the nearby temple. A young monk named Renji had heard whispers of the mysterious princess and her secret garden. Drawn by tales of her dedication and quiet strength, he sought her out not as a courtier, but as a fellow traveler on the spiritual path. Their meetings were gentle and tentative at first. Conversations held beneath the canopy of blossoming lotuses, where words were often replaced by shared silence and understanding. Renji shared teachings from the sutras, guiding Aiko deeper into the Dharma's wisdom, while the princess revealed her dreams, her fears, and her hopes. Between them blossomed a subtle romanza connection, rooted not in passion alone, but in shared awakening, feminine spirituality, and the garden's power. The garden became a living symbol of feminine spirituality, an embodiment of nurturing, patience, and transformation. It stood as a quiet rebellion against the strictures of court life, offering a sacred space where the princess's inner light could flourish as seasons changed. The garden's beauty drew others, women and men alike, who found solace and inspiration in its serene embrace. The garden's mystical events one evening, as twilight deepened and the moon rose full and bright, a miraculous event occurred. The water in the lotus ponds began to shimmer with golden light. The petals of the lotuses glowed softly, illuminating the garden with a sacred radiance. Aiko and Renji, drawn to the scene, felt a profound sense of peace and transcendence wash over them. In that moment, the boundaries between dream and reality blurred, and the garden became a place where the divine touched the earthly. The princess's transformation through her dedication to the garden and her deepening practice of the Dharma. Princess Aiko transformed from a restless girl into a wise and compassionate woman. She became a beacon of spiritual strength within the palace, inspiring those around her to seek harmony between tradition and renewal. Her story was a testament to the power of feminine spirituality, the ability to nurture growth, embody grace, and awaken the light within. Reflection, the lotus, and the heart. The tale of the princess and her garden invites us to consider the sacred within ourselves. How, from the depths of challenge and solitude, can arise profound beauty and wisdom. It reminds us that spirituality is not only a path of doctrine, but of the heart, and that love, whether quiet or radiant, is a force that can awaken and transform. The wind carried an ominous chill as it swept through the villages nestled beneath the great mountains of Yamato. What began as isolated coughs and fevers soon grew into a dark shadow, spreading swiftly from town to town. The plague had come silent, merciless, and unstoppable. Villagers huddled in their homes, watching helplessly as loved ones withered away, the pall of death hanging thick in the air like a suffocating fog. Even the priests of the Shinto shrines were at a loss. Their prayers and rituals offered no relief. Fear blossomed alongside despair, and the old gods seemed silent. The monk's arrival this bleak time, a monk named Eisho arrived in the afflicted region. His robes, once pristine, were now dust-streaked from his journey across mountains and rivers. In his hands, he carried a scroll bound in gold thread, the Healing Sutra, an ancient text said to hold the power to ward off sickness and death. Through chanting and faith, Aisho had traveled far, guided by visions and whispers of a suffering land in desperate need of hope. Faith tested, the villagers were wary. Some regarded Aisho with suspicion, a foreign monk preaching a strange religion that challenged the old ways. The Shinto priests warned the people, the new faith may anger the kami. It is not our way. Yet, with nothing left to lose, desperate families gathered in the temple courtyard to listen as Aisho unfurled the Healing Sutra and began to chant. His voice, calm and steady, echoed over the trembling crowd, weaving ancient syllables that seemed to ripple through the air. Like a healing balm, miracles in the midst of despair. First, skepticism prevailed. But as days passed, a miraculous change began to stir. Those who listened to the chanting found their fevers abating, their strength returning. A child, thought lost to the plague, opened her eyes. A man, crippled with weakness, rose to his feet, and hope returned to the hearts of the people. Whispers of miracles spread, and the Healing Sutra became a beacon amid the darkness. Resistance and conflict, however, not all welcomed this new faith. The local Shinto priests, fearing loss of influence and respect, accused Aisho of blasphemy and warned of divine retribution. Tensions mounted. The village elders debated whether to embrace the monk's teachings or cling to their ancient customs. Aisho, steadfast and humble, offered no force, but only the gentle invitation of the Dharma. The turning point, one stormy night. As lightning tore across the sky, the village temple caught fire. Many believed this to be the wrath of the kami, punishing those who followed the foreign monk. But in the chaos, villagers united, Buddhists and Shinto practitioners alike, to extinguish the flames and save the sacred spaces. This act of unity sparked a new understanding. Perhaps the old and new could coexist. Their powers combined for the good of all. Healing beyond the body, the plague eventually waned. But its lessons endured. The Healing Sutra was more than words. It was a call to compassion, faith, and transformation. It taught that healing begins in the heart, that suffering is universal, and that through understanding and kindness, true salvation is possible. Reflection, faith in the face of fear. The story of the plague and the Healing Sutra reminds us that in the darkest times, faith, whether born from tradition or new teachings can be a powerful source of hope and renewal. It challenges us to open our hearts beyond fear, to embrace change with humility, and to recognize that healing often arises from unexpected places. In the early dawn light, the silhouette of a lone samurai stood atop a hill overlooking the mist-shrouded valley. His armor, once gleaming, was dulled by years of battle. His hands, calloused from gripping the sword's hilt, trembled as memories surged like a storm. His name was Takashi, a seasoned warrior whose name had been whispered with respect and fear across the lands. He was known for his unparalleled skill with the katana and his fierce loyalty to his lord. Yet beneath the armor and the battle-hardened exterior lay a soul weary and fractured. For years, Takashi had fought in countless campaigns, his blade ending lives, carving paths of blood and honor. But the faces of those he had slain haunted his knights, young boys, farmers, fathers, all blurred into a chorus of silent accusations. He had begun to question the purpose of his path, the meaning of honor stained with blood. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Takashi's path crossed with that of a wandering monk named Kensei. The monk's robes were simple, his demeanor serene, and in his eyes shone a calm light that unsettled the samurai. "You carry much pain," Kensei said softly, observing the warrior's restless spirit. "But the sword you wield is not the only way to fight." Takashi scoffed, his grip tightening on his sword. "I am a samurai. My sword is my honor and my life." Kensei smiled gently. "There is a battle within all men greater than any fought with steel. The battle for peace within the heart." Intrigued and disturbed, Takashi followed Kensei to a secluded temple nestled in the forest. There, he was introduced to the teachings of the Buddha, the middle way, compassion, and the possibility of ending suffering through understanding and nonviolence. At first, Takashi resisted. The way of the sword was ingrained in his being. How could peace come from laying down his blade? Yet, each day spent in meditation and discourse planted seeds of doubt about the path of violence he had walked for so long. Takashi's internal conflict deepened when his lord demanded he lead a campaign to crush a rebellious village. The order ignited the warrior's duty and his newly kindled doubt into a fierce storm. He traveled to the village, bird sword sheathed but heavy on his side. There, he encountered farmers, children, and elders' faces that mirrored those he had killed. Instead of raising his sword, Takashi chose to speak. He told them of the futility of war, of suffering, and compassion. His words were met with fear suspicion, and anger. When soldiers arrived to enforce the Lord's command, Takashi stood between them and the villagers. He refused to fight. "Violence breeds only more violence," he declared. "I renounce the sword." His own men branded him a traitor. The samurai faced imprisonment and exile. But in that moment, Takashi shed the weight of his past and embraced a new way. The way of peace. Takashi became a wandering monk. His armor replaced by simple robes, his sword by silent compassion. He traveled across the land, teaching the Buddha's words, inspiring others to seek peace within themselves and in the world. His story became a legend of a samurai who abandoned the sword, not out of cowardice, but from a profound inner transformation. Reflection. The true warrior, the tale of Takashi, reminds us that true strength lies not in the power to destroy, but in the courage to change, to forgive, and to choose peace over conflict. It challenges the notion of honor bound to violence, opening a path toward redemption through compassion and understanding. The early morning mist clung like a veil over the serene slopes where the newly constructed temple of Kurokawa stood. Its towering wooden pillars, adorned with intricate carvings of lotus flowers and dragons, gleamed faintly beneath the awakening sun. This temple was meant to be a beacon, a sacred place to honor the Buddha and usher in a new era of enlightenment for the realm. Yet, beneath its polished floors and soaring eaves, whispers stirred. Shadows moved in secret corridors, and the sacred space that was meant to radiate purity began to pulse with hidden agendas. The temple was founded by the powerful daimyo Fujiwara no Masanobu, a man of both devout faith and ruthless ambition. Masanobu had financed the grand project not only to demonstrate his piety, but to consolidate his influence across the region. To him, religion was a tool as sharp as any blade. Within the temple's inner sanctum, the revered abbot Genshin presided. A monk of austere discipline and profound wisdom. Yet even he was not immune to the currents of power swirling around him. Among the monastic community were those whose hearts had darkened with greed and envy. Part 2. The web of intrigues. The temple flourished. A secret faction formed among certain monks and retainers, intent on manipulating the sacred space to their own ends. Led by a shadowy figure known only as the Raven. This cabal sought to control not only the temple, but the very spiritual heart of the province. The Raven was a master of deception, skilled in the ancient arts of persuasion and concealment. He operated from the temple's forgotten chambers, weaving plots that threatened to corrupt the Buddha's teachings and undermine the delicate balance of power. Unbeknownst to the abbot, His closest advisor, a monk named Kion, had been seduced by the raven's promises of influence. Kion's loyalty wavered, torn between spiritual duty and worldly desire. Part 3. The Silent Warning. One evening, under a moonless sky, a young novice named Haruto stumbled upon a clandestine meeting deep within the temple's catacombs. Hidden behind a lattice of bamboo, he overheard plans to smuggle relics and alter sacred scriptures to suit the conspirators' ambitions. Terrified but determined, Haruto sought out Abbot Genshin, entrusting him with the terrible knowledge. The abbot's face darkened with sorrow. The betrayal was closer than he feared. Part 4. The purification ritual to cleanse the temple of corruption. Abbot Genshin invoked an ancient ritual known only to the highest ranks of monastic order, the ceremony of the pure flame. This rite, performed once every century, was said to purify not just the temple's stones and pillars, but the very souls within. As the monks prepared for the sacred ceremony, tensions ran high. The raven and his followers plotted to sabotage the ritual, fearing the light would expose their schemes. Part 5. The Battle of Shadowzon. The night of the ceremony. The temple was shrouded in incense and the low chant of sutras. But as the sacred flame was lit, dark forces moved. A violent struggle erupted in the temple's depths. Monks turned against monks, the clash echoing through the hallowed halls. Haruto, though young and untrained, displayed courage beyond his years. He fought alongside Abbot Genshin to repel the traitors, wielding faith as his weapon. Part 6. Revelation and renewal in the aftermath. The raven was unmasked, a former warrior turned monk whose bitterness had twisted his soul. T's followers were exiled or imprisoned. The temple, though scarred, emerged renewed. Abbot Genshin's leadership was stronger, his commitment to the true Dharma unwavering. Kurokawa became not only a place of worship, but a symbol of resilience, a testament to the power of spiritual purification over worldly corruption. The village of Mizukawa lay quietly between mist-shrouded hills and silver rivers, cradled in the arms of the Japanese archipelago's early spring. The air was thick with the scent of blooming sakura and damp earth, and villagers busied themselves preparing for the festival of planting. Yet, on this night, the heavens themselves seemed to mark an event far greater than any earthly ritual. A crimson hue bathed the moon, casting an eerie yet mesmerizing light on the thatched roofs and stone lanterns. The village elders gathered at the shrine, murmuring prayers to Amaterasu, the sun goddess, to bless the land and its people. Among them, old Kenji, the wisest and most weathered, observed the moon with a furrowed brow, sensing a portent beyond his years. Meanwhile, In a modest hut on the village's edge, a young woodcutter and his wife awaited the birth of their first child. The woman, Hannah, moaned softly, gripping the wooden beams as labor pains surged. Her husband, Taro, sat nearby, chanting sutras taught by a passing monk at the moment the child emerged. The crimson moon's glow seemed to intensify, bathing the room in surreal light. The infant, a boy, cried softly, gentle, almost melodic sound that soothed those present. The midwife, a stern yet kind woman named Yuki, gasped. The child's face was serene, his eyes closed, as if already dreaming of distant realms. She whispered, "This child is no ordinary one. His spirit is calm as a still lake, and his presence is like a blessing." Taro looked at his son with a mix of awe and hope. "We shall name him Renji," he said, which means lotus child. "May he grow pure and strong." Renji's infancy was unlike any other child's. While most infants cried ceaselessly and grasped wildly, Renji would gaze steadily into the eyes of those who held him, as though peering into their souls. When a baby cried nearby, Renji would raise his small hands and calm them with soothing coos. By the time he was 2, villagers began to speak in hushed tones. Renji had begun to speak simple but profound phrases. Much to the astonishment of those who overheard, his mother would tell visitors, "He spends hours beneath the old sakura tree, eyes closed, breathing in the wind like a monk." Monks from the nearby temple, intrigued by rumors of the child's wisdom, came to observe. One day, Master Shun visited and tested Renji. "Tell me, child, what is the path to end suffering?" he asked. Renji's gaze was steady. "Compassion, Master. It is the river that cools the burning heart. Without it, no one reaches the shore." The gathered monks murmured, some doubtful, others struck by the boy's precocious insight. Renji's nights were filled with vivid dreams, flashes of temples carved in gold, endless gardens of lotus, blossoms and monks chanting under vast stars. In these dreams, he saw faces he did not recognize, yet felt a profound connection in one vision. He knelt before a great teacher who placed a hand on his head and spoke, "You have chosen to return again and again to walk among those who suffer. Your vow is eternal, Bodhisattva." Upon waking, the young boy would recount the dreams to his parents, eyes shining with wonder. "Am I truly a Bodhisattva?" he asked Hannah once. She smiled softly, brushing his hair. "Perhaps, my son, but whether so or not, your kindness and light already heal those around you." With early wisdom came isolation. Renji's peers unable to understand his strange maturity, often mocked him or kept their distance. Some villagers whispered dark rumors. Was he blessed or cursed? Some feared his uncanny presence, calling him the Strange One or the Child of Spirits. His parents protected him fiercely, while Hannah recited sutras at home to shield him from malevolent forces. Yet Renji felt the weight of expectation. The villagers looked to him for guidance, and sometimes he faltered under their gaze. One afternoon, a group of boys taunted him near the riverbank. "Why do you speak like a monk? You're just a child." One jeered. Renji's eyes filled with tears. "I only wish to ease pain," he whispered. An elder, passing by, placed a gentle hand on Renji's shoulder. "The path is difficult, child, but your heart is strong." News of Renji's gifts spread beyond Mizukawa. Pilgrims journey to seek his blessing. Nobles debated his significance at court, and rival temples sent envoys to assess him. Some saw a threat, a child who challenged dogma and tradition with pure compassion. A few feared political upheaval. If the boy's influence grew, monks of the established schools gathered in councils, debating if Renji was truly enlightened or a mere charlatan. Some elders whispered about testing him with ancient rites. Others warned against harming a potential savior. Renji, meanwhile, remained humble. He sought no power or praise, only peace for those who suffered. As Renji grew, he began traveling beyond his village. He visited towns stricken by famine and war, sharing teachings in simple parables that resonated deeply. He healed the sick with herbal poultices and chants, tended to orphans, and mediated disputes. His presence inspired transformation, hardened. Warriors laid down arms, greedy merchants gave alms, and skeptical priests opened their hearts. At a small mountain monastery, he met an aged monk named Tagen, who became his mentor. Under Taigen's guidance, Renji deepened his understanding of the middle way, learning to balance compassion with wisdom. On the eve of his 16th birthday, Renji sat beneath the crimson moon again. His dreams spoke to him more vividly. A cosmic council of bodhisattvas urging him to continue his earthly journey. He pondered deeply. Could he forsake mortal life and attain final nirvana, or remain bound to the cycle of rebirth until all beings were free? In the stillness, Renji made his vow anew. I will walk among suffering, lighting the way until the last soul finds peace. Renji's story became legend, the boy who was the reincarnation of a bodhisattva, whose early enlightenment brought hope and healing to a troubled land. Though centuries passed, tales of his compassion echoed through temples and villages, inspiring generations to seek the path of kindness, courage, and awakening. The city of Nara, nestled in the verdant heart of the Japanese archipelago was stirring beneath the waning light of a spring afternoon. Cherry blossoms fluttered softly in the breeze, painting the streets with a delicate carpet of pink petals. Traders and monks mingled along stone-paved pathways, their voices blending in a symphony of languages from distant lands: Chinese, Korean, and the native tongue of Yamato. At the city's spiritual heart, the towering gate of the great temple stood resolute for majestic portals adorned with intricate carvings of dragons, lotus flowers, and celestial beings. They bore the name, the Four Gates, symbolizing the many paths through which seekers enter the Dharma's vast realm. Today, these gates would witness a historic confrontation, the coming together of the greatest Buddhist minds in Japan. Inside the temple courtyard, preparations were underway. Servants arranged cushions and incense burners, their movements precise yet reverent. The air was thick with the mingled scents of sandalwood and freshly turned earth from the surrounding gardens. As the sun dipped lower, lanterns flickered to life, casting dancing shadows on ancient pillars. Among the gathered crowd were nobles draped in silk robes embroidered with gold thread, humble farmers clutching prayer beads, and monks from distant monasteries whose saffron and crimson habits marked their devotion. The weight of expectation was palpable. Whispers spread like wildfire. This debate could shape the future of Japanese spirituality. Standing apart from the throng were four figures, each radiating a distinct aura. They were the masters summoned to represent their respective schools, custodians of divergent interpretations of the Buddha's teachings, each certain of their path's truth. Master Kagan, representing the Tendai school, was a man of middle age with a warm smile and eyes that gleamed with compassion. His voice was steady and melodious, capable of filling the vast temple without amplification. He believed in the universality of the Lotus Sutra's message that all beings, regardless of rank or past deeds, possessed an innate Buddha nature, ready to bloom. Beside him stood Master Jinzen of the Kegon school, his gaze sharp and contemplative. His robes were adorned with elaborate patterns symbolizing the Avatamsaka Sutra's cosmic web. Jinzen spoke rarely, but when he did, his words evoked the infinite interconnectedness of existence, inviting listeners to perceive the world as a boundless, interlaced reality. Master Genjo of the Hoso school was lean and austere, his demeanor disciplined. Ganjo championed the primacy of consciousness, teaching that all phenomena are products of the mind's activity. He wore simple robes, carrying scrolls filled with commentaries and treatises. Finally, the enigmatic master Taido represented the Zen school. His presence was quiet but commanding, like a still pond reflecting the sky. Dressed plainly, Taido favored silence over speech, and his few words cut through the noise like a sharp blade, urging direct experience beyond textual knowledge. As the temple bell tolled, signaling the debate's commencement, Master Kagen stepped forward. His voice rang clear. Esteemed masters and seekers of truth, we gather today under the four gates to illuminate the path of the Buddha. The Lotus Sutra teaches us that the seed of enlightenment lies within all sentient beings. Through faith, practice, and compassion, even the humblest may attain awakening. He bowed gracefully, his eyes sweeping across the audience. Master Jinzen nodded, then raised a hand to speak. Compassion alone does not suffice. The Avatamsaka Sutra reveals a cosmos of infinite manifestations, where all beings and phenomena are interdependent. Enlightenment arises from perceiving this vast network, transcending the illusion of separateness. Jiangzhou took his turn, voice calm but firm. Perception is the cornerstone of existence. Without understanding how the mind shapes reality, one remains shackled to delusion. Of consciousness, the audience was spellbound when Master Taido rose. His voice was soft but unwavering. All sutras and teachings are but fingers pointing to the moon. The moon is enlightenment. To grasp it, one must look beyond words, beyond concepts, into the silence where truth resides. The debate deepened. Master Kagen challenged Taido. Your rejection of scriptures risks nihilism, discarding the Dharma's guiding light. Taido replied calmly, it is not rejection, but transcending attachment to words. The Buddha himself taught the limits of language. Ginzin and Genjo exchanged sharp retorts over the nature of consciousness and the cosmos. Was reality fundamentally interdependent or primarily a mental construct? The tension was subtle but electric. Each master defended their tradition passionately, yet the room held a respectful quietude, as if the very air were charged with the intensity of sacred inquiry. Asterisk, as the evening deepened into night, the courtyard became a stage where more than words were exchanged. The four masters, while outwardly calm, each carried a fire within, a burning passion for the Dharma and its correct expression in this new land. Master Kagen, in his heart, saw the struggle as a battle for the soul of the common people. His Tendai faith embraced the idea that salvation was not an exclusive gift, but a universal right. He recalled the countless peasants and merchants who found solace in the Lotus Sutra's teachings, their hardships eased by hope in Buddha nature. He observed Master Tito's insistence on silence and direct experience with a mix of admiration and concern. Might he be too radical? Could abandoning scripture lead to chaos? The thought nagged at him. Meanwhile, Master Jinzan, steeped in the grandeur of the Avatamsaka Sutra's vision, felt the weight of cosmic truth pressing on him. His mind raced through the images of infinite universes, all harmonizing like a celestial dance. To him, reducing the Dharma to mere meditation was a loss of this magnificent cosmic vision. Master Genjo's stern gaze pierced the night. His life's work had been to decipher the subtle workings of consciousness. To him, faith without insight was blindness. He feared that Master Koggen's emphasis on faith might lull followers into complacency, and Master Taido, standing quietly at the fringe, felt the impatience of one who had walked the path alone in the mountains, facing the raw immediacy of awakening. Words and texts were chains that bound seekers from the truth that lies beyond thought. The crowd watched in rapt attention, their reactions as varied as their social ranks. Some nodded fervently at Master Koggen's call for universal enlightenment, seeing in it the promise of peace and salvation. Others were captivated by Master Jinsen's poetic portrayal of the cosmos, their imaginations soaring to realms beyond earthly suffering. More learned individuals were drawn into Genjo's detailed analysis, intrigued by the mind's power to shape reality. Yet, the common folk, curious but cautious, whispered about Master Taido's rejection of scriptures. Was it liberating or dangerous? Amidst the crowd, priests of the native Shinto faith exchanged uneasy glances. To them, this Buddhist debate was not just theological. It threatened to eclipse the ancient kami and the traditions that had sustained their ancestors for generations. Just as the debate seemed to teeter on the edge of discord, an unexpected voice broke through the tension. An elderly monk, draped in simple robes, yet radiating a serene authority, stepped forward from the shadows. His voice was calm, imbued with centuries of wisdom. Masters, seekers, noble souls, he began, we gather here to unravel the Dharma's mysteries. Yet must remember the Buddha's teaching on the middle way, the path beyond extremes, and rigid dogmas. Let us not fracture this precious jewel of truth by clinging too tightly to one corner. The four masters paused, absorbing the elder's words. In that moment, the atmosphere shifted. A gentle breeze of humility and reflection swept through the crowd, renewed. The masters resumed their dialogue with softer tones and open hearts. Master Koggen acknowledged, faith guides us, but insight must illuminate our journey. Master Jinsun added, the cosmos is vast, yet our individual mind mirrors its infinite beauty. Genjo admitted, the mind's nature is subtle and profound, but practice is needed to awaken it. Kaido smiled faintly. Words can inspire, but true realization is beyond speech. The crowd exhaled, feeling the tension ease, replaced by a blossoming sense of unity amid diversity. Though no decisive victor emerged, the debate of the Four Gates left an indelible mark on Japan's spiritual landscape. It revealed that Buddhism in Japan would not be a monolith, but a rich tapestry, woven from multiple threads, scholarly rigor, mystical experience, compassionate faith, and cosmic vision. This event spurred generations of monks and lay followers to seek their own paths, honoring both tradition and innovation. The Four Gates remained, not only as physical portals, but as symbols of the many ways to approach the eternal truth. Deep within the ancient, whispering forests of Japan, where the sunlight struggled to pierce the dense canopy of towering cedars and maples, a young disciple named Haru prepared for the most profound journey of his life. The air was thick with the scent of moss and earth, and the distant murmur of a stream accompanied the gentle rustling of leaves. This forest, untouched by the clamors of civilization, was a sacred realm, a place where spirits dwelled between the seen and unseen worlds. Haru's initiation was not merely a ceremony, but a rite of passage, an arduous trial to awaken his spirit and bind him to the path of the Buddha. For generations, disciples seeking true understanding had ventured into this forest, embracing solitude, silence, and the mysterious presence of nature's ancient guardians. The elders spoke of the spirits who roamed these woods, kami, who embodied the elements, yokai, who tested the purity of one's heart, and the silent watchers, invisible but ever present. To walk this path was to confront not only the darkness of the forest, but the shadows within oneself as dawn broke. Haru stepped beyond the village boundaries, leaving behind the familiar comforts of hearth and home. His footsteps were light, but resolute, his mind focused on the mantra whispered to him by his master. In stillness, find motion. In darkness, find light. He carried nothing but a simple robe, a begging bowl, and a wooden staff carved with ancient sutras. With each step deeper into the forest, the world of human distraction faded away, replaced by the raw symphony of life bird calls, insect songs, the whisper of wind through leaves. At night, the forest transformed. Shadows lengthened, and the veil between worlds thinned. Haru found himself attuned to subtle sounds, the crackle of twigs that might signal a spirit's presence, the faint glow of willow, the wisps dancing in the distance. Fear came and went, replaced by awe and reverence. Haru's first trial came unexpectedly as he encountered a mysterious figure cloaked in mist. The spirit spoke in riddles, challenging Haru's understanding and desire. What burdens do you carry, disciple? Will you cast them off or let them bind you forever? Each trial that followed tested his patience, humility, and faith. He faced illusions of loved ones calling him home, temptations of power and glory, and terrifying visions of death and oblivion. Yet, with every encounter, Haru learned to embrace uncertainty, relinquish ego, and deepen his meditation. The forest, once a place of external danger, became a mirror reflecting the depths of his soul. After weeks of wandering and trials, Haru reached the sacred glade, a clearing bathed in ethereal moonlight where the ancient rites were to be performed. The air hummed with energy as the master monks arrived, carrying incense and chanting sutras that echoed like the heartbeat of the earth. In the center stood the ancient stone altar, inscribed with symbols of the Dharma and the cycle of rebirth. Haru knelt, his heart steady, despite the enormity of the moment. The elder chanted the vows of the monastic order, invoking the protection of Buddha, the Bodhisattvas, and the forest kami. As the final syllables fell into the night, Haru felt a profound transformation, a quiet blossoming of peace and clarity within. He was no longer merely a seeker, but a vessel of the Dharma, bound to protect and spread the teachings through both word and silence. Asterisk, as dawn broke on the 7th day of his solitary wanderings, Haru found himself before an immense tree unlike any he had ever seen. It towered above the rest of the forest canopy, its gnarled roots exposed like ancient veins, its bark tattooed with moss and time. The air around it shimmered subtly, as if reality here was thinner, stretched over something deeper. This was no ordinary tree. It was the Kodai Makaran, the 1,000-year magnolia, whispered of in old monastic chants as the resting place of a powerful forest spirit, one that judged the souls of seekers and could either open the final gate to truth or cast them into a spiral of delusion. Haru bowed before the tree, sensing its awareness. He sat beneath it in zazen, focusing on his breath, allowing the silence to enter him. Time melted, hours passed, or maybe days. Then a soft voice echoed, not in his ears, but inside his chest. So, you seek to be emptied, but what of your name, your past, your desire to awaken? Are these not seeds within you? Will you uproot them, too? Haru did not respond. Instead, he listened. The tree continued. You come with the intent to be pure. But purity that resists shadow is another kind of attachment. You wear humility like a robe, but will you shed even that? At those words, the forest darkened. The roots around him began to twist. Vines grew swiftly like snakes, encircling his legs. Visions emerged from the ground, her gentle hands washing rice, his childhood friend who drowned when Haru was too afraid to dive in after him. The face of a girl who once loved him, whom he had abandoned for the Dharma. Are these ghosts or truths? The spirit asked. Haru's heart clenched. Shame rose, thick and bitter. He spoke softly. They are truths, and I welcome them. At that, the vines loosened. A luminous fell into Haru's lap. It pulsed with gentle warmth. Not just approval, but a sign. The spirit of the forest had given its blessing, but the trial was far from over. On the night of the full moon, Haru entered a glade where the river widened and stilled, forming a natural mirror. Drawn by the serenity, he approached to wash his face and froze. His reflection was not his own. In the water, he saw a version of himself dressed as a lord, adorned with silk and golden ornaments. This Haru stood in a palace, surrounded by servants, power in his eyes. He looked strong, respected, even revered. Then the image shifted. The same Haru, now an old monk in a city temple, surrounded by hundreds of disciples, revered as a sage. But the eyes in both versions were hollow, restless, hungry. Then the water trembled again, and a third image formed. Haru, as he was now tired, dusty, uncertain, but peaceful. His eyes held questions, not answers. And in that gaze, something else flickered. Light. Suddenly, the moon's reflection on the water split into countless silver threads, forming the mandala of samsara, the wheel of existence. It spun and spun. Each spoke a life, each life a lesson, each lesson a door, and in the center, silence. Haru wept, not from sorrow, but from surrender. Deeper into the forest, Haru encountered a figure known only in temple lore, the hermit of the hollow oak, an ancient monk who had taken a vow of silence for 70 years and lived in harmony with the spirits. The hermit's hut was built into the trunk of a massive fallen oak, overgrown with mushrooms and ivy. Smoke rose from a chimney crafted of clay and bone. When Haru bowed in greeting, the hermit responded with a slight smile and handed him a bowl of soup made of wild herbs, river moss, and a single lotus seed. They did not speak for 3 days. Haru stayed, helping in silence. He chopped wood, fetched water, tended to injured animals the hermit had taken in, a fox with a twisted paw, a crane with broken wings, a half-blind boar. He realized that service was also a form of meditation, and silence a form of prayer. On the morning of his departure, the hermit handed Haru a scroll. It was old, wrapped in lotus silk. When Haru opened it, he found not words, but an ink painting of an empty bowl. And in that emptiness, he understood only the vessel that is empty can receive the rain. At last, Haru returned to the inner shrine. In the heart of the forest, the stone torii gate was covered in moss. The bell rope frayed, but the presence was unmistakable. Something ancient dwelt here. He rang the bell once, and the chime echoed through the trees like a ripple through time. Monks in ceremonial robes awaited him. They wore masks representing the four guardians of the Dharma: the lion of fearlessness, the dragon of clarity, the phoenix of rebirth, and the turtle of patience. The ritual began as the monks chanted the Heart Sutra. Haru was washed in mountain spring water, symbolizing the cleansing of karma. He was then wrapped in white cloth, signifying death to the ego. Finally, he was given a single crimson thread to tie around his finger. The thread of interdependence. He was asked only one question: "Who are you?" He answered with a bow and a smile. No words, only presence. That night, Haru slept beneath the stars, his head on the roots of the Kadai Makuren. In his dreams, the forest spoke, not in words, but in symbols: a falling leaf turning into a bird, a stream splitting in two, then rejoining, a mountain bowing to a cloud. He awoke at dawn with no new knowledge, but with a transformed awareness. The world was no longer separate from him. The moss, the wind, the sun, all breathed the same breath. He had become a forest himself, not as something to be conquered, but as something sacred to be lived. Asterisk. In the age when Japan was still young, its people moved to the rhythm of nature and worshipped the myriad kami spirits of the wind, the mountain, the river, and fire. The sacred was everywhere, yet unseen. But across the sea, beyond the sunrise, came whispers of a new kind of awakening, a light that moved not through storm or flame, but through stillness, breath, and compassion. This was the Dharma, the teaching of the Buddha, and it had now found its way into the soul of the Yamato court. It began with Prince Shadoku, a boy whose mind was sharper than his years, and whose eyes held the memory of 1,000 lives. Born into royalty, he often wandered the gardens alone, speaking with trees and meditating by the koi ponds. The court found his silence unsettling. Yet one night, the prince dreamed of a vast wooden structure rising like a mountain, not to conquer nature, but to honor it. In his vision, monks from distant lands chanted in unison, and a great statue of the Buddha stood in the center, radiating gold that did not blind but revealed. when he awoke. He bowed before the morning sun and whispered, "It must be built." The court was skeptical. The building of such a structure, not for a kami, but for a foreign deity, was unprecedented. But the emperor, who had also begun to dream of bodhisattvas and golden wheels, gave his blessing. The location was chosen, Ikaruga, a gentle plain bordered by forest and sky, where deer walked undisturbed and the wind sang of ancient things. From Baekje, the Korean kingdom that had first brought the Dharma, came architects and monks, among them the revered master Gwisel. He brought scrolls of design, statues of Avalokiteshvara carved from sandalwood, and a fragment of the Buddha's robe wrapped in lotus silk. These were not merely materials, they were sacred intentions in physical form. As the foundation was laid, the sky turned strange. For 3 nights, the moon glowed crimson. On the 4th night, monks heard a voice chanting sutras in the wind, though no human throat gave sound. Some claimed to see ghostly figures walking the site at dawn, monks in ancient robes, their palms pressed together, their feet never touching the ground. One day, as workers raised the first beam, a great white serpent slithered from the forest and coiled itself at the heart of the construction. No one dared strike it. Prince Shadaku, upon hearing the news, simply bowed and said, "The guardian has arrived." The serpent remained for 7 days, then vanished into the earth beneath the future pagoda. In its place, wild lotus flowers bloomed where none had grown before. The carpenters who worked on the temple were no ordinary men. Many were chosen for their dreams. Each one had seen visions of wheels, birds of fire, or floating mandalas. They carved without needing plans. One man, blind since birth, sculpted the face of the Buddha Amida with a chisel and said afterward, "I saw him in the dark." His face lit my soul. As the temple rose, stories spread throughout Yamato. Peasants who passed near the site found their illnesses healed. A mute girl touched the first stone of the foundation and spoke for the first time. "He is watching." A hawk landed upon the temple's highest beam and remained there, unmoving until the final tile was laid. The day of the temple's consecration arrived with rain, not a storm, but a gentle, rhythmic blessing. Monks walked in procession around the temple, carrying incense and chanting the Lotus Sutra. As the final bell rang, the clouds parted and sunlight struck the face of the Buddha statue inside, making it gleam as though alive. Prince Shadoku, now robed in white, stood before the crowd and spoke. "This is not merely wood and stone. It is a door, not to heaven, but to the heart. And in that heart, we find all beings, past, present, and yet to come. From that day forward, Horyu was more than a building. It was a symbol, a meeting of lands, of spirits, of eras. The first temple of the Buddha in Japan became a seed from which countless others would grow. It would survive fires, wars, and the passing of dynasties, yet the light within it never dimmed to this day. It is said that on silent mornings, if one stands alone within its courtyard and listens closely, the beams of Horyuj still echo with the chants of those who built it and the breath of the serpent who guards its soul. Asterisk. In the eastern mountains of Yamato, where the mists clung to cedar trees like whispers from the other world, there lived a monk known only as Junin, though most called him simply the Silent Master. He had taken a vow of silence the day he first saw the image of the Buddha at the age of 12, and had not spoken a word since no one knew where he had come from. Some claimed he was born during an eclipse. Others whispered he had wandered into the temple gates as a child wrapped in robes not of this land, carrying a single stone carved with a lotus. Whatever the truth, Junin had become the spiritual heart of Kogenji, a humble mountain monastery few ever reached, not because of its remoteness, but because it was said that only those with a sincere heart would ever find the path that led to its doors. Junin was not a teacher in the conventional sense. He spoke no sermons, wrote no scrolls. His teachings lived in his actions. The way he swept the temple grounds at dawn, his stillness in meditation, the meals he prepared for birds in winter. His presence alone was said to soothe aching hearts and quiet the restless minds of pilgrims who managed to find their way to him. He had no disciples in the traditional sense. Those who came seeking answers were greeted by silence, and yet many left transformed. A merchant who lost everything came seeking revenge against his partner and left instead with tears and a bow, whispering, "I understand." A widow who could no longer bear her grief climbed to the temple with the intent of dying, but returned home days later with a small stone in her pocket and a smile no one could explain. Years passed, then decades. The cherry trees bloomed and withered, as did dynasties and wars in the lowlands. But Junon remained unchanging, ageless. Some believed he no longer belonged to the cycle of birth and death. One morning, just as the sun broke the horizon with a light the color of quiet fire, the bell at Pogangji rang once, a deep, long tone. The villagers in the valley below heard it and knew something had shifted. In the temple, the monks gathered. Skunan, now an old man with silver hair like moonlight, had called them for the first time. He sat in the main hall before the statue of Vairocana Buddha. Around him, the air shimmered faintly though no incense was burning. His eyes were closed, his breath shallow. The monks waited, unsure what to expect. Then, without opening his eyes, Junin spoke. His voice was quiet, like wind through reeds, but it filled the hall, and later. The monks would swear that though he spoke only once, each of them heard different words. The scribe heard, "The silence is the teaching." The abbot heard, "No dharma exists outside of your breath." The novice sweeping the floor in the back heard, "When you wash rice, bow to it. It was once light." The weeping mother in the corner heard, "All forms return to formlessness, even sorrow." Then his eyes opened, not with pain, not with age, but with a light that made the room seem both full and empty at once. He looked to each monk and smiled, and with that final expression of kindness, he exhaled and did not inhale again. His body remained seated, back straight, hands in a dhyana mudra, even in death. When they tried to move him later, they found his robes were warm, as if sunlight lived within them. That night, a comet passed over the mountains. In the valley, children dreamed of floating flowers, and the elderly heard bells in their sleep. For weeks, birds gathered at a temple, circling the roof at dawn. And when the monks opened the room in which Junin had lived for 60 years, they found no writings, only a single stone carved with a lotus, and beside it an open bowl filled with fresh snow that did not melt. They built no grand shrine for him. Instead, they placed the stone at the foot of the Bodhi tree in the courtyard and left it there. On rainy days, the water pooled in the carved petals. On sunny days, it shone like a mirror dot. In time, the story of the silent master spread across the land. Monks debated the meaning of his final words, though none could agree on what exactly he had said. Some built entire sects around their interpretation. Others chose silence, honoring his example in wordless devotion. But those who truly understood did not argue, nor did they preach. They simply returned to their breath, their sweeping, their small acts of mindfulness, and in the quiet between moments, they found the teaching again. And so, the last words of the silent master live on, not in temples or scrolls, but in the space between two thoughts, in the warmth of hands pressed together, and in the humility of listening to that which can never be spoken. Asterisk. In the final age of the early dharma's expansion across Japan, long after temples had risen and wars had burned them down, and new ones risen again, there remained a legend. It was passed between pilgrims on old forest roads, whispered by monks, in moonlit cloisters, and woven into lullabies sung by mothers who believed their children had known the Buddha in a dream. It was called the living sutra. A scroll said to breathe, not metaphorically. The legend insisted it breathed. They said the parchment was not of paper or silk, but something no one had ever named. The ink moved like slow tides when unwatched. The letters rearranged themselves depending on who read them, and most impossibly, the scroll spoke not in sound, but in silence, echoing inside the reader's thoughts, revealing only what their soul was ready to receive. Its origins were as mysterious as its nature. One tradition claimed it had been written by Shakyamuni Buddha himself in another incarnation, during a life long before his birth under the Bodhi tree, as a forest mystic who had glimpsed the future of suffering and sealed his vision into the sutra with a vow to return for it. Another tale said the scroll had fallen from the sky during the reign of Emperor Suiko, wrapped in a lotus that hovered above the great pagoda of Horyuji for 7 days before dissolving into light. The most persistent version, and the one most carefully kept, told of a wandering monk named Enzin, who appeared during the time when the Dharma's flame began to flicker under the weight of court politics, corruption, and war. Anzan had no lineage, no temple, and wore robes dyed with soil. His only possession was a bundle wrapped in tattered blue cloth. He walked from province to province, never staying long, speaking only when asked, and never twice to the same person. He could read minds, people said. He healed a blind girl by placing the cloth-wrapped scroll on her brow. He stopped a battle between 2 clans by placing the scroll between them. They said he wept as the swords fell to the ground. When asked what was in the bundle, he would reply, "Only the truth you've forgotten." Enzin left no writings, but those who saw the scroll described visions. One saw the birth of the universe as a single breath. Another saw the face of his mother, long dead, smiling beside a tree that was not of this world. One monk wept for 7 days after reading it, and then left his monastery to live alone in a cave, where he carved 1,000 miniature Buddhas into the walls with his fingernails. But then Anzan vanished. Some claimed he walked into the ocean, leaving no footprints. Others believed he transcended the realm entirely, carrying the living sutra back to the world between worlds. A rare few whispered that the sutra was never physical, that Anzan was the scroll incarnate, a bodhisattva whose body had become the scripture. Generations passed. The legend faded from official records, surviving only in dreams, paintings hidden behind temple walls, and stories told by Philght, until one day, centuries later, a young boy named Sutta, the son of a fisherman in a dying coastal village, wandered into the cliffs during a storm. He had no interest in temples or teachings. His father beat him. His mother died of fever. He had stopped believing in the gods long ago, but something called to him. It wasn't a voice. It was more like a pull, a thread in his chest. It led him to a cave sealed by fallen stones. Inside, dry despite the rain, was a skeleton in monk's robes and a bundle wrapped in faded blue cloth. He touched it, and the moment he did, the rain stopped, time stilled, the waves froze mid-crest. The wind bent around him as if bowing. The scroll unwrapped itself. The characters shimmered, then settled. They were in a script he had never seen, and yet, somehow, he understood. Not with the mind, but with a deeper memory, as if these were the very instructions of his soul before it was born. The first line read, "You have died many times, but this is the first time you are awake." Sutta fell to his knees and wept. He spent 3 days in the cave without food or sleep. The scroll showed him not knowledge, but remembrance. His lives as a soldier, a healer, a prince, a murderer, a monk, the pain he caused, the love he lost, the vows he made, and how, in every life, the Dharma had waited patiently for him to listen when he emerged. The villagers said he had changed. His eyes were older, his voice softer. He no longer fished, but sat by the sea each morning in meditation, smiling at the wind. Some feared him. Others came to him in secret, seeking the scroll. But he never showed it again. He would say only, "It is not written in ink. It is written in the silence between your breaths." Years later, when Sutta was old and his hair like silver tide foam, a scholar from Nara found him and begged to see the living sutra, to record it for the Imperial Libraries. .sout handed him a blank scroll. The scholar laughed, thinking it a joke. "There is nothing here." Sutta only nodded. "Then read more deeply." That night, the scholar burned all his manuscripts and became a monk. To this day, the living sutra remains untraceable. Some say it was buried with Sutta. Others believe it now lives in the heart of every sincere seeker, that it was never a scroll, but the unfolding of the awakened mind itself. And it is said that if one walks alone under a new moon with a heart heavy but open, a voice might rise within you, wordless but known, and in that moment you will understand that the Buddha never wrote on paper. He wrote on you. Asterisk.